Claressa Shields just declared war on Atlanta, and Eva Marcille just slit the microphone open. Claressa, sweetheart. Listen. If you thought the Papoose divorce noise was loud, baby, you have not seen anything yet, because what just went down between Claressa Shields and the entire city of Atlanta is the kind of match nobody trains for. And I'm about to tell you exactly what set this off, because this is not a small skirmish, this is not a 2-day trending cycle, and this is not some manageable little press hiccup that a fight camp publicist can smooth over with a soft focus training montage on a Sunday morning. This is a full-blown reputational grenade with the pin already pulled, and the woman who pulled it is Claressa herself. Yeah. She really went there. Here is the shape of the thing before we start pulling it apart. The champion, the undefeated, 5-division, only 4-time undisputed world champion, the GWOAT, as she rebranded herself, sat down in front of a live radio audience in Atlanta this week, and Mz Shyneka asked her a very specific question about her relationship with Papoose. Claressa Shields answered that question live and on the air with a smile you could have baked bread on. She kept it composed. She kept it clean. She said the right things about a divorce and about a separation and about being misunderstood. And then, the moment the microphone cooled, the moment she got behind the safety of a phone camera and a training bag in her own front door, the GWOAT blew the whole thing up herself. She went online. She recorded a tirade. She dragged Mz Shyneka's marriage, dragged her body, dragged her age, dragged her career, and dragged the way she asked the question, and then she added the one sentence you never say when you are trying to sell tickets in a city that raised the woman you just insulted. She called Mz Shyneka fat. In Atlanta. About a woman Atlanta considers family. Trust and believe, Atlanta heard her. And Atlanta answered. Because within hours, Eva Marcel, yes, that Eva Marcel, the model turned actress turned unofficial spokeswoman for every woman in the A who feels disrespected, put on her earrings, put down her coffee, and put Claressa Shields on notice. And the words Eva used were not the words of a woman playing around. Eva Marcel said, and I quote the energy of it because you need to feel this, that Mz Shyneka is her best friend, that Mz Shyneka is beautiful inside and out, that the whole town does not play about Mz Shyneka, and that Claressa needs to watch her throat when she talks about a woman's weight. Watch her throat. Respectfully. That last word did all the work in the world. You already know your girl came dressed for the whole show, so pull up a seat, because we are unpacking this one all the way down to the studs. Let's rewind the tape to the actual interview, because that is where the fuse got lit. Mz Shyneka, a radio veteran, a woman who has interviewed everybody who is anybody in Atlanta, a woman who is universally considered one of the more measured personalities in that market, asked the champion a version of the question every reporter in the country has been asking for months now. Why Papoose? Why now? While he is still legally married to somebody else? Not a wild question. Not a stitched-together gotcha. It was, in fact, the same question that would come out of the mouth of any journalist doing their basic job. And Claressa, on air, handled it. She said Papoose is separated. She said the divorce is in motion. She said in her mind and in the mind of the man she is with, he is not a married man, he is a man mid-transition, and she chose not to see it any other way. Fine. Debatable, but fine. That is her answer. She got to give her answer. Nobody stopped her. Nobody threw water. Nobody snatched anything. That was that. So what changed? Word out of Atlanta right now is that Claressa Shields watched the clip go viral, watched the comments section rip her open, watched Team Remy Ma quietly high-five in group chats across the internet, and decided that the person who was going to pay for that feeling was not the audience and not the algorithm, it was the woman who asked the question. So she opened her phone, opened her mouth, and opened a war that she does not have the roster to fight. Because here is what Claressa does not seem to understand about the city she picked. Atlanta is not New York. Atlanta is not Flint. Atlanta is not a city you steamroll with a title belt and a loud voice. Atlanta is a city where the women talk to each other, the women eat together, the women vouch for each other, and if you disrespect the wrong woman in front of the wrong microphone, the city closes ranks before your promoter can even print a poster. Mark my words, Claressa Shields is about to feel the closing of those ranks in her ticket count, in her sponsor calls, and in her Instagram inbox, and there is not a hand-wrapping ritual on earth that can undo the damage she just did to herself. Now let me read you what the champion actually said, because I do not paraphrase receipts. Claressa said Mz Shyneka is a cheater. Claressa Shields said Mz Shyneka is the CEO of the Cheat on Your Husband committee. The champion said Mz Shyneka got divorced because she stepped out on her own man with a barber. The GWOAT said Mz Shyneka needed to be asking her for gym tips because Miss Peggy, in Claressa's words, was carrying weight of her own. She, in the same breath she used to defend her right to date a still-married rapper, told the world that she and Mz Shyneka are not the same, that her body is real, that her face is real, and that the reason Papoose is with her is because, and I want you to hear this line as it was delivered, because it will loop in your head for the rest of the week, the things her little Puna can do are amazing. Cold. Ice cold. Frozen. That is not a champion talking. That is a woman who lost the argument on air trying to win it in the parking lot. And this is where Eva Marcille walked in. Because let's not get ahead of ourselves, Eva Marcille is not a bystander here. Eva Marcille is not a passing commentator scrolling the timeline. Eva Marcille is Mz Shyneka's actual best friend. On the day of the interview, Eva Marcille had already posted a birthday tribute to Mz Shyneka calling her Big Leo and calling her the woman she wants to see win her best year yet. So when Claressa Shields decided to record a video from her training corner mocking that same woman for her body, Eva Marcille was not offended as a stranger. Eva Marcille was offended as family. And Eva Marcille handled it the way any Atlanta big sister handles it. She reminded Claressa, in public, in permanent ink, that on air there was nothing but space and opportunity, meaning, if you had all this fire in your chest, you had a microphone in your face and a woman across the table, and you swallowed it. You waited until you were safe at home to say what you did not have the courage to say to a face. Eva Marcille used the word respectfully, and every woman who has ever worked in a woman's world knows that when the word respectfully lands at the end of a sentence like that, it is not a courtesy. It is a warning. And here is where the strategy of this whole thing starts to unravel for the champion, because Claressa Shields has a fight on the calendar. August 15th. State Farm Arena. Atlanta. Against Kaye Scott. A fight Claressa herself has been begging the culture to pay attention to. A fight she has been personally hand-selling on radio, in gyms, in barbershops, on every podcast that would loan her a microphone. A fight, quite honestly, that was not exactly setting record pre-sale numbers even before this week. Now imagine that same fight being marketed inside a city whose most beloved daytime radio host just got publicly humiliated by the main event. Imagine that same fight trying to move upper bowl seats in a market whose model-turned-actress-turned-city mother just told the champion, on the record, to watch her throat. There is not enough Papoose in the world to reverse that ticket slide. Now, Claressa Shields fans, listen. I am not here to bury a champion. I am not here to erase her resume. Claressa is a serious athlete. The champion has titles that other fighters spend entire careers reaching for. Claressa has done what almost nobody in the sport has ever done in the modern women's era. That is not the argument. The argument is this: Claressa Shields keeps behaving like the fame she has as a boxer transfers automatically into the fame economy of the entertainment world, and it does not. It does not. In the ring, the champion can outwork anyone. Out in the culture, she is a rookie carrying a heavyweight belt she has not earned yet. And Atlanta is the wrong city to learn that lesson in. Let's talk about Mz Shyneka for a second, because the GWOAT put her name on trial, so let's actually try the case. Mz Shyneka is older than Claressa Shields. Mz Shyneka has been in Atlanta radio for a long, long time. Mz Shyneka has interviewed athletes, rappers, actresses, and reality stars in that same seat, without incident, for years. Mz Shyneka has a following that is not built on beef, it is built on trust, on being the woman who asks the question the audience is thinking. If she was easy to bully, somebody would have bullied her by now. And she, a young woman who has been in the entertainment side of this game for a season and a half, tried to run through her the same way she runs through southpaws in the gym. That is a category error. That is a strategic mistake. That is the kind of unforced error that costs you a cosign in a market you cannot afford to lose a cosign in. Word out of Atlanta right now is that even the promoters attached to the August 15th card at State Farm Arena are quietly nervous. They are watching the same social feeds we are watching. They are counting the same negative comments we are counting. They are seeing the same clips of Eva Marcille speaking her whole spine into a camera. And they are asking the question every promoter asks when the wrong week hits the wrong fighter: is this a scratch, or is this a wound? Because scratches heal in a news cycle. Wounds cost seats. And what Claressa did to herself this week is not a scratch. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. There is another layer here, and it is the layer nobody wants to say out loud, so of course I am going to say it. Claressa Shields is not fighting Mz Shyneka. The champion is fighting the shadow of Remy Ma. Because everything about the way Claressa is showing up in these interviews, the defensiveness, the preemptive strikes, the sudden hostility to a routine question, is the behavior of a woman who has not yet made peace with the fact that she stepped into somebody else's marriage while the ink was still wet. That is a hard bag to carry. It is a heavy weight for a champion who is used to punching her way out of every corner. And instead of carrying it with grace, she is punching her way through the wrong opponents. Mz Shyneka is not Remy Ma. Eva Marcille is not Remy Ma. Atlanta is not Remy Ma. But Claressa Shields is treating every one of them like the referee that already ruled against her. And that is the psychology piece. That is the real story under this story. Claressa is angry, and she does not know where to aim the anger. Now, sweethearts, we have to talk about the Alicia Baumgardner moment, because you cannot understand what happened this week without going back to that clip. If you remember, the champion had a physical run-in with Alicia Baumgardner at a public event not long ago. Same pattern. There was space. There was opportunity. There was a whole hallway with no security. And Claressa Shields did not do anything until the security guards arrived and stepped between the two women, at which point, with the safety net in place, Claressa reached over that security guard and swung. Now, whatever you think about who was right or wrong in that moment, the pattern is the pattern. The champion is a woman who lets her frustration build in silence and then unloads it in the safest possible geometry. That is the same pattern we just watched play out with Mz Shyneka. On air, the GWOAT kept it composed. Off air, in the safety of her own front room, Claressa Shields let it fly. If you did not see it before, you have to see it now. This is a pattern. Trust and believe, Atlanta sees the pattern. Let's move to Papoose for a second, because half the internet wants to place the blame for all of this at his feet, and I need us to correct that instinct together. Papoose is not the puppet master of this situation. Papoose is not writing She's clapback scripts. Papoose is not the one recording video from a training corner calling a beloved radio host fat. Claressa is doing all of that on her own initiative, with her own hands, with her own microphone. And I want us to give her credit for that, because the thing she keeps saying in every interview is that nobody controls her, nobody handles her, and nobody speaks for her. Fine. Then own the words. Own the moment. Own the pattern. You do not get to tell the world you are the boss of your own choices in one sentence and then let your fans blame your boyfriend in the next. Claressa Shields is the author of the champion's timeline right now, and the timeline is not flattering. Now, is Papoose helping? No. Let's be honest about that too. Papoose parading around Atlanta in matching outfits with Claressa while his divorce from Remy Ma is still legally in motion is not the visual that calms a public relations storm. It is fuel. It is oxygen. It is a walking advertisement for the exact question Mz Shyneka asked. But that is a different problem. That is Papoose's karma to sort. What we are unpacking today is Claressa Shields' decision to burn her own house down over a question that had already been answered. Let's read Eva Marcel's post one more time in spirit, because I want you to feel the temperature of it. Eva Marcel said the same interview she is complaining about had nothing but space and opportunity for her to speak on air. Eva Marcel said Mz Shyneka is nothing but beautiful. Eva Marcel said the whole city does not play about Mz Shyneka. And then Eva Marcel said Claressa needs to watch her throat when she talks about a woman's weight, and closed with the word respectfully, a word that in Southern women's vocabulary is a shot fired across the bow with the safety on. That is not gossip. That is documentation. That is Eva Marcel creating a public record. And once a public record exists, promoters read it, sponsors read it, ticket brokers read it, journalists read it. That is what the champion does not seem to grasp. When Eva Marcel says something publicly about a young female athlete in Atlanta, sponsors quietly reconsider. When Eva Marcel says something publicly about a young female athlete in a city where Eva Marcel is a mother figure, agencies quietly reconsider. When Eva Marcille says the whole town does not play about a certain woman, the town does not play. That is not a threat. That is a temperature reading. Mark my words. Claressa Shields is about to feel that temperature drop across every business relationship attached to this fight. And here is the other thing nobody is saying yet. There is a body-shaming double standard sitting right at the center of this fight. Claressa spent an entire viral tirade calling Mz Shyneka fat, calling Mz Shyneka Miss Peggy, calling her weight the reason her interview question was invalid. But the champion is a professional athlete whose body has fluctuated across weight classes throughout her career, sometimes by 15 or 20 pounds inside a single training cycle. That is not a criticism of Claressa Shields, that is just the sport. Fighters cut. Fighters rebuild. Fighters carry different weights at different times of year. But you do not get to be a woman who has personally lived through the physical honesty of that process and then turn around and use another woman's weight as a weapon on the internet. That is not confidence. That is not a champion mentality. That is the exact behavior the GWOAT told us her whole career she was above. Y'all, I am not making this up. Now, is there a version of this story where she calms it down, walks it back, apologizes to Mz Shyneka on camera, and rebuilds the room in time for August 15th? Sure. It is possible. Claressa Shields could, right now, today, record a short, calm, undramatic video apologizing for the body comments, thanking Mz Shyneka for the platform, thanking Eva Marcille for the honesty, and moving on. That is a 5-minute video. That is a same-day rescue. That is a professional publicist's dream Tuesday. But everything Claressa has done in the last 72 hours suggests she is not interested in that road. She is interested in being right, being loud, being combative, and being felt. And that is the athlete's mindset. That is a fighter's mindset. But it is not a promoter's mindset, and it is not a brand's mindset, and it is going to cost her the very audience she is trying to build. Word out of Atlanta right now is that Mz Shyneka is not going to say another word about this in public. Word is that Mz Shyneka has been advised by people close to her to stay silent, let Eva Marcille speak, let the city speak, and let the champion keep talking. Because as long as Claressa keeps talking, Claressa Shields keeps losing. That is a professional level piece of advice. That is the kind of advice you take from people who have watched 100 of these fires burn themselves out. Mz Shyneka is doing exactly what a veteran of this business does when the champion picks the wrong fight. She is stepping back. She is letting the champion swing at air. She is watching the crowd start to boo the champion in her own corner. That is chess. She is playing checkers. Let's zoom back out. Because there is a bigger picture, and it is the picture that is going to matter for the rest of Claressa's career. Claressa Shields is at the point in her career where she needs the entertainment world to love her more than the boxing world already does. The pay comes from crossover. The endorsement comes from crossover. The film cameo, the reality show offer, the podcast run, the sneaker deal, all of it comes from being a person that the culture wants in the culture's rooms. And the fastest way to lose access to those rooms is to make yourself the woman who body-shamed a beloved radio host and then declared war on the black women of an entire major city. That is a career-limiting decision. That is a decision that costs endorsement checks that were already in the pipeline. That is a decision that makes agents pause before returning her manager's calls. That is not a small thing. That is a career pivot point. Trust and believe. And Eva Marcille knows it. That is why Eva Marcille used the word respectfully. Because Eva Marcille was not just defending her friend. Eva Marcille was doing what a big sister of a city does when a young woman is about to make a decision that will define her decade. She gave her one last public warning, in daylight, with witnesses. And if the champion is smart, she takes the warning. If Claressa is stubborn, she doubles down, and we watch this story write itself into a case study inside the next 12 months. Now, some of you are already in the comments asking, what does this mean for the August 15th card at State Farm Arena? Fair question. Realistically, the fight still happens. Boxing does not cancel fights over social media discourse. But the number that matters, the number Claressa Shields does not want you to know, is the pre-sale number for the upper bowl seats. That number is the honest number. That is the number that tells you whether a city has embraced a fighter or merely tolerated her. That number, before this week, was already softer than a champion of her caliber should command. And after this week, that number is going to fall in a direction that no amount of hand wrapping and shadow boxing footage can correct. Sweetheart, this is the paragraph I need the champions team to read. You cannot market a fight in Atlanta if the daughters of Atlanta do not want to be in the same building as the main event. You cannot fill State Farm Arena on the back of a boxing resume alone. You need the room. You need the culture. You need the women. And this week, the GWOAT told the women of Atlanta, one of them by name, and all of them by implication, that she is willing to weaponize a woman's body against her when the argument gets uncomfortable. That is what the room heard. That is what the room is going to remember on August 15th. Now let me also say this, because fair is fair. Mz Shyneka's original question was, in the ears of some, a little sharper than it needed to be. Some people did feel that Mz Shyneka's tone leaned into gotcha territory. That is a legitimate critique. If she had responded, off-air, with a calm video saying, listen, I felt like the question was framed unfairly, and here is what I would like to add to my answer, we would not be having this conversation today. That version of Claressa Shields would have looked mature, measured, and in control. That version of Claressa would have gained respect, not lost it. But though the champion we got instead is a Claressa Shields who reached for the meanest available weapon in the arsenal, a woman's body, and swung with it. And once you swing that particular weapon, you cannot unswing it. It leaves a mark. You already know your girl came dressed for the whole show, so let me give you the other angle nobody is asking about, Remy Ma. Where is Remy Ma in all of this? Silent. Perfectly, professionally, terrifyingly silent. Remy Ma has not posted about this. Remy Ma has not commented on this. Remy Ma has not needed to. Because every single decision Claressa is making in public right now is a decision that quietly rehabilitates Remy Ma's image in the minds of the audience. Every clip of she body shaming a radio host makes Remy Ma look like the adult in the room by default. Every clip of Eva Marcille correcting Claressa on behalf of Atlanta makes Remy Ma look like the woman the culture used to like more than it realized. Claressa Shields is running Remy Ma's PR campaign for free right now. And she does not even know she is doing it. That is the level of self-inflicted damage we are watching. Let me pause here and say something to the Papoose fans in the comment section, because I see you. I see the argument that Papoose has been in this game longer than any of us have been paying attention. I see the argument that Papoose does not owe Remy Ma or the champion or the internet an explanation of his own personal timeline. I see the argument that Papoose is a grown man. All of that is fine. All of that is fair. But none of that is what we are here to unpack. What we are here to unpack is the fact that Papoose's silence during this Mz Shyneka meltdown is louder than any statement he could have released. Because if Papoose truly does not have a hand in the way Claressa is representing their relationship in public, then somebody needs to sit her down in private and tell her that this week has been a disaster. And if he has not done that, or he has done that and been ignored, then we are watching a very specific type of relationship dynamic play out in real time. Let's be really honest about one more thing. The Papoose situation is not the story anymore. It has not been the story for weeks. The story is Claressa Shields' temperament. The story is the champion's inability to absorb a soft question without turning it into a viral tantrum. The story is the GWOAT's decision to treat every microphone like a heavy bag. And the story is that Atlanta, a city with a very long memory for how you treat its women, just clocked her doing it. Mark my words, this is the moment we are going to point to a year from now when we are asking why the crossover career never took off the way it should have. And now I want to talk to you about the elephant in the ring, the way Claressa Shields is being talked about behind closed doors in the sport itself. Because here is the whisper that has been circulating for months now, and this week has only made it louder. There are people inside boxing, trainers, matchmakers, camp coordinators, who have been quietly saying that she has become a difficult book to close deals around. Not because of her skill. Her skill is real. But because of what people in the industry call the noise-to-purse ratio. Every time Claressa opens a promotional cycle, the noise gets louder, the reputational risk climbs, and the ticket math gets shakier. That does not mean anybody in boxing wants to say it publicly. Nobody says these things publicly. But when Eva Marcille says what she said, and when Atlanta reacts the way Atlanta is reacting, the private conversation gets a public exhibit. That is not a rumor. That is arithmetic. Now, here is where I have to say something to the champion defenders in the room, because I know you are there and I want you seen. Some of you are saying, well, Mz Shyneka should have asked a better question. Some of you are saying, well, Papoose is a grown man. Some of you are saying, well, if this were a man being asked about his marriage he would not have to answer. All of those points have some fairness to them. But none of those points give Claressa Shields cover for what she said about Mz Shyneka's body. None of them. Once the argument moved from why are you with a still married man to your body is proof I am better than you, the argument left journalism and entered cruelty. And there is no version of that cruelty that a promoter can spin. Word out of Atlanta right now is that some of the local businesses that were planning to buy blocks of tickets for the August 15th undercard are quietly holding off. Not canceling. Just holding. Watching. Waiting to see if Claressa apologizes. Watching to see if the temperature comes down. Watching to see if Eva Marcille softens her tone. And if none of those things happen inside the next week, those blocks do not get bought. That is what a losing pre-sale looks like, not a headline, but a quiet stall in the corporate seat count. I want you to pause on that for a second. That is the actual cost of one bad Tuesday. Now let me pivot, because I know some of you are here for the pure entertainment of it all, and I got you. The best line of the entire week did not come from she, and it did not come from Eva Marcel. It came from an anonymous comment on a repost of the whole saga that read something like, the champion trained 10 years to become a household name, and blew it in 10 seconds trying to be the loudest voice in a radio segment. That is not a shot. That is a diagnosis. Trust and believe, that comment section is a museum right now. Let's also address the double entendre that Eva Marcel tucked into her post, because it deserves credit as pure craft. When Eva Marcel told Claressa Shields to watch her throat, she was talking about two things at once. On the surface, she was telling Claressa to watch what she says. Underneath, she was telling the champion to be careful about how she talks about women's weight in a city that will not forget the disrespect. It is a double meaning that only lands the way it lands because Eva Marcel is a communicator by trade. That kind of surgical bilingual sentence is what the whole game respects. And Claressa Shields, whether she knows it or not, was just clapped by the sharpest tongue in Southern entertainment media. Cold. Ice cold. Frozen. Now, sweethearts, I want to close the loop on something I opened earlier. I told you at the top that this is not a small skirmish, this is not a 2-day trending cycle, and this is not a manageable little press hiccup. I stand by that. Because the way you can tell whether a moment is a story or a saga is by watching who joins the conversation in the second wave. In the first wave, you get the fans of both parties. In the second wave, you get the peers. And in the second wave here, the peer who arrived was Eva Marcel, a woman who does not comment on everything, who does not chase relevance, and who does not throw her name into a fire unless the fire is real. Eva Marcel's arrival is the tell. When Eva Marcel arrives, it means the culture has decided a side. And the culture has decided a side. The side is not Claressa. Let me also say the thing I know some of you are thinking but not quite typing yet. It is possible, and I am not saying it is likely, I am saying it is possible, that this whole cycle is going to affect the champion long past August 15th. Because reputation in the entertainment side of sports is not a Tuesday problem, it is a decade-long ledger. Every clip lives. Every screenshot is filed. Every quote is searchable. And if a young woman calls a beloved radio host fat in a viral video in August, that clip is going to resurface every time she has a press cycle for the next 10 years. Every documentary. Every biopic. Every retrospective. Every one of them will have to decide whether to include this week. And most of them will. That is how these things work. That is the cost of the swing. Now, is the GWOAT going to lose the fight on August 15th because of this? Probably not. Claressa Shields, in the ring, is she. She is elite. She will fight her fight. She will likely win her fight. But winning the fight and winning the moment are not the same thing anymore, and the moment is what pays. The moment is what puts you on billboards. The moment is what puts you in commercials. The moment is what gets you the second act career after the last belt is defended. Claressa just spent her moment on Mz Shyneka, and Mz Shyneka did not even swing back. There is a phrase in the Atlanta radio world that explains exactly what Mz Shyneka is doing in her silence. The phrase is, let the tape play. When you have been recorded saying something reckless, the smartest thing your opponent can do is nothing, because every replay of your reckless words hurts you more than it hurts them. Mz Shyneka is letting the tape play. Eva Marcille is letting the tape play. Atlanta is letting the tape play. And every hour Claressa Shields refuses to apologize is another hour of that tape playing on a loop in the head of every person on the fence about a ticket for August 15th. That is not accident. That is warfare, the kind the champion does not know how to counter, because her whole training is built for a fight where somebody swings back. And listen, while we are naming the strategy, let me tell you what a real crisis management team would be doing for Claressa right now if she had one in the building. They would be pulling every clip of her being kind to an interviewer, every clip of her defending another woman, every clip of her showing up for a charity, every clip of her mentoring a young female fighter in Flint or in Atlanta or in New York, and they would be seeding those clips into the feed as fast as they can render them. They would be booking her on softer, gentler platforms, the sit-down long-form shows where a champion can be a human being for 40 minutes without pressure, and they would be starving the internet of her raw, unfiltered self-directed videos. That is the play. That is what 100 publicists in Los Angeles would be quarterbacking on a Wednesday morning like this. Instead, what we are watching is Claressa Shields open her phone every day and hand another log to the fire. That is not a communication strategy. That is a self-immolation plan. Let me leave you with the picture that is going to stay with me the longest from this whole week. It is not the picture of she yelling into her camera. It is not the picture of Eva Marcel's post. It is the picture of Mz Shyneka, back at work the very next day, on air, doing her job, taking calls, laughing with her co-hosts, not saying a word about it. Because that is what a professional does. That is what a woman who has been in the game a long time does. She lets the other woman keep swinging. She keeps the show on the air. She lets the city do the talking. And the city is talking, sweethearts. The city is talking loud. Now here is my question for you, and this is the one I need you to actually type an answer to before the algorithm moves you on to the next video. If you were on Claressa's team, her manager, her publicist, her promoter, her mother, would you tell her to apologize to Mz Shyneka this week and try to save the Atlanta room before August 15th, or would you tell her to double down, sell the beef as promotion, and let the tension put the last few thousand tickets in the seats? There is a real argument on both sides. There is a version of this where the controversy actually helps the gate. There is a version where the controversy sinks it. Which version are we watching? Tell me in the comments. And be honest. Because the answer to that question is going to say more about how you see the entertainment side of boxing than it does about the champion. And when you are done with that question, I have one more for you. Where is the line? At what point does defending your relationship with Papoose cross into shaming other women? Is Claressa Shields even aware that she has crossed the line, or has she convinced herself that anything short of applause from the interviewer is disrespect? These are not rhetorical questions. These are the exact questions that Atlanta is asking about Claressa right now, and these are the exact questions that are going to determine whether the August 15th card sells the last 10,000 seats or leaves them empty. Trust and believe, I already know your girl is going to have to come back with a part 2 before the end of the week, because the champion does not know how to leave a microphone alone, and Eva Marcel does not know how to let a warning go unanswered. Keep it locked. This one is about to burn down. And listen, before you close this tab and go make dinner, do me a favor. Type the word Atlanta in the comments if you think Claressa Shields owes Mz Shyneka an apology. Type the word champion if you think the GWOAT was inside her rights the whole time. And type the word both if you think Mz Shyneka's question deserved a better answer but she's response deserved a better filter. I read every one of them. I answer as many as I can. And I use your votes to decide what we cover next. Because your girl does not guess. Your girl reads the room. And the room right now is telling me that Claressa Shields vs Atlanta is a story that is only just beginning, and Eva Marcel has already lit the first fuse. Sweethearts, until the next one, stay tuned, stay loud, stay respectful the way Eva Marcel means it, and I will see you on the next drop.